What is the Russian system and why it produces elite athletes in Russia, and how Russian skaters specifically are dominant in every competition in any field? They always seem to end up on the podium placements and seem to be the Olympics stars and gaining all the fame. So let's talk about how the Russian system is actually structured. Let's deep dive into the details, the figures, the stats. We are going to explore all the sides to Russian skating and why their system is dominant. Then we're also going to explore the Western side and see how that one differs and how it doesn't produce as many elite athletes and a pipeline, if you can call that. So let's deep down into the sports schools. Now that's the foundation of all the Russian system, how it's built, because it all starts from a very young age. Usually people start to coach their kids at the age of 3 years old, and really they build up to an elite level. So the sports have a Olympic reserved pathway, which is the feeder of the system, if you must say, because from a very young age, the children are taught that it's not just an extracurricular activity. This can lead to an Olympic reserve, an Olympic championships, a career. And that is really delved into the child when they're younger. So they understand that these trainings that they can do can build a future for themselves. It's not just, oh, I don't really like it. No, it can really build up the future and open different doors. That's why all the schools have the Olympic reserve. Most elite skaters come through state-backed sports schools, often called the Sports Schools Olympic Reserve, where training interrogates into broader public sport structures. Now this is really important because, as I said, that there is a much bigger funding in the sports schools, particular from the state, because they want all the people to be able to be active in a way, and also to build stable lineup for the Olympic Games, specifically because it brings national pride. And that definitely is a factor to kind of show the world that they're very strong. So there's big city hubs like Moscow and St. Petersburg, which the schools are really much funded a lot. Moscow's networks of sport education institutions matter because it concentrates on rink access, top coaches, selection events, sponsorship TV, iShow markets. So mainly the two cities are Moscow and St. Petersburg that are very funded by the government. There's so many rink access, very good coaches in particular, like we have Sambo 70, we've got Plishenko's Academy, we have Mishin's, we have all the top elite ones in the Moscow and St. Petersburg regions. Now, in terms of that, you can also get a lot of sponsorship deals, especially Channel 1, which live streams all the events, all the competitions, and it funds a lot of the skating, especially if you're in the national team, as well as other sponsorships like media like Dobrafon. You might heard of that one. Kamila Valieva is currently sponsored by that. When she returns to competitions, she'll be able to do all her trainings behind the scenes, doing any competition elements or whatever it might be. But she is sponsored over there. Same goes to that. So a lot of the skating, because it's media-based, are very much sponsored through that. And that's how income can be built up, and schools are very much well-funded to provide as much equipment that they need for their students. At the top, many athletes are tied into national team structure, where pay and support are linked to results and selection. Forbes reported CSP links salary figures and how they can also scale to achievement. Now, CSP is Center of Sport Preparation, which indicates that an athlete, when they reach their masters, can earn a salary. Now, an athlete can have their major in whatever age. there are specific requirements that they have to achieve in order to get this salary. Now, that is a very much motivational factor for anybody, because by the age of 13, if the child reaches to master, if they can accomplish certain jumps, they can perform really well, they can do these specific technical elements and artistry, they are classified as masters of sport. They already have that, and then they get a monthly salary. Of course, when you are reaching higher, placing in first, second, and third, you are going to get extra pay and extra money. But that's the base salary. So lots of athletes want to achieve master of sport to be able to have access to that monthly budget salary. But that is why it's so much linked into how well you are placed and how well you are selected, because you can earn even more as an athlete when reaching the high ranks. Looking at the participation growth, 2018 to 2021, there is a significant rise in how many people do figure skating. From 2018, it was reported 17,721 people were doing figure skating. And in 2021, it was reported 26,049, which is a significant height and population of figure skating. Now, they really do want more people to be involved in figure skating because it brings ratings, it brings popularity to the sport. It brings significantly more athletes that can be in this Olympic reserve and can contribute to more, and therefore build stronger competitions, and therefore athletes have to work harder and they improve. So the base is widening a lot, and more kids entering the pipeline. Competitions for top slots can get very brutal because you are competing with the very best. Everybody wants to be on the national team, and there's a lot of talent. Some examples of institutional scale, Sambo 70, and this is their finances. So, if you don't know, Sambo 70 is a Moscow sport education institution, and it's widely associated with figure skating in particular. They do other sports, but figure skating is really popular because guess who's in that camp? Eteri Dobritsa, the well-known coach that pretty much when you hear Russian figure skating, you might associate it with Eteri Dobritsa because she produced the Olympic cycles and dominates the female field in particular. But their funding for the school wasn't just figure skating, there's other sports involved, but it was reported 13 billion rubles, which is approximately $170 million invested into the school, and an extra budget activity of 121 million rubles reported just this year. So the numbers are very much that, and it's not just that, but the government are facilitating this and investing their money into these schools to be able to continue produce this talent. A lot of the kids that have the talent are on scholarships, and therefore all of their costs are free. As long as they have the talent, then the government don't mind investing. And so this isn't a small private club model. It's a large state-linked institution with billion rubles scaling reportedly. So I did do another video before that about how the money kind of flows within the system and how skaters earn money. But there are very different layers involved, and I'm just going to briefly touch upon them. There is a full breakdown video that I will link in the description down below for you to check out. But just to give you some context. So the Kremlin announced a presidential scholarship for citizens with strong athletic performance/contribution. This is part of why Russian athletes can have a baseline safety net if they recognized or selected. So to break this down a little bit further, there is scholarships that the presidential agreed to sign if they're very talented and have athletic potential. Like I mentioned, that a lot of schools, the kids' parents don't have a lot of money to spend. They might initially fund a lot while they're in their childhood, but once they reach maybe masters or the talent peaks through, they enter these elite schools, everything is for free. They don't pay for competitions. They don't pay for costumes. They don't pay for any travel expenses. All of that is covered by the government. And that's why they're given a scholarship agreement. And that is a very, very key difference between how the Russian system works and how the Western. The Russian, even if you're poor, you still have opportunities if you're talented. They see that. If you're a talented person, they will give you anything possible, so money is definitely not a constraint. Forbes reportedly gives a reference point often to cities in Russian sport media. Top-level athletes' monthly salary is around 150,000 rubles, which is approximately $2,000 a month for an elite athlete. Now that is actually a lot of money, because think about it, they do not have any additional expenses to do, so that is pure profit on their side. Then they have a lifetime presidential stipend. For an Olympic medalist, examples record that they get 52,000 rubles per month for gold, they get 39,000 rubles for silver, and they get 30,000 from bronze. And that is all in detail in my other video that you can check down in the description below. So very much you can earn a lot more with just the basic salary, on top of even more if your achievements are valued and you place very high in competitions. So it's kind of a gamble, and that's why it's very much motivational for the athlete to keep going, because the prize money is a lot and there is tough competition altogether. So it's not just your training is going to waste. No, you're going to be getting a lot more, and they are very much more motivated. So a typical day in a life structure from skaters in general is that they usually start very early, around 8 o'clock. They have choreography, they have physical training off ice, then they have ice time, then they have a break, which is an hour, maybe 2 hours, lunchtime, and then they repeat the cycle again. So really the athletes are working a standard 8 hours, plus they have only 1 day off. So really they're working from a very young age all these hours, but it's all about repetition and really about consistency. So they always get 2 ice show seasons with a built-in school, tutoring and resting. Some schools are more funded than others and do provide all the other necessities, for example, education. But a lot of Russian schools already have programs set. If you're an athlete, you have kind of a different curriculum than just a standard student. So if you're missing school because of trainings, they are understandable about it. There's a new rule with that. So they can go to normal school, or they can choose tutoring by themselves, online. It's up to them, the different forms of schooling that they want to do. So think of the system as a competition machine. It really generates a lot of athletes to compete constantly and to uphold this level of athleticism. It really is like a machine. And the athletes are kind of like robots in a way, because they have the same thing over and over again, but with loads of different benefits. So there's positives and negatives to it. Mishan, quoted, described the strength being the system of competition, selection, and small starts. So basically what it's saying is that they always have some sort of competition, whether it's Grand Prix, whether it's some other tournament that's more for fun, like for example, choosing your different teams, blue, green, red, the different ones, like then they have jump competitions, they have different ones, they have galas, they have so much going on, different events for athletes to participate in. So it's not just the boring Grand Prix and that's it. No, they have so much more scheduled in the calendar, and it really gets the athletes again more motivated to work, preparation and competition ready. That's the key factor, especially when international competitions are banned and athletes feel so unmotivated, and the level, they don't want the level to drop. It has significantly dropped now. I think everybody's more relaxed because they see the international stage without the Russians. It has gone down, the technical side of it, but they still want to uphold it. They still want to encourage athletes to continue training, to continue moving forward with the sport and not going backwards. There's constant internal selections, pressure, substitution for international events. And to parallel with that, they also have opportunities to participate in ice shows, which is another different kind of opportunity to earn income, which I do delve into the ice shows. You can check the video out in the description below. I'm not going to do too much on it, but there is an exit way for Russians to move on from competition. They still want to do figure skating, they still want to train, and now move on to more like ice shows, more commercial side of it. So it's like a slow transition, which doesn't break the athlete completely and think, oh, what a waste, they can't find themselves. No, they offer much more work after. Buch, a major producer, had quoted, high quality ice shows can cost up to 70 to 80 million rubles just to try and build the infrastructure for the shows. And stars can earn a lot. They can earn up to 100 to 200,000 per appearance. So that's a lot of money, and that's per show. So think about all the other shows that they consistently produce. Loads of people want to specifically train competitively, earn some rankings to participate in ice shows and get a lot paid, because they do get quite a bit. Now the trade-off. There are always positives and negatives, like I mentioned, and even though the system is highlighted, there are also a lot of criticism. And a lot of people always, I see in the comments saying, well, yes, they're producing all these stars, but what cost? There's a lot of burnout. They are shouting, they're abusing the children, they're starving them, or even just athletes. And they're doing long hours. They're doing long hours because it's their job. If you think about any other job, you're working a standard 9 to 5. You're working 8 hours. And an athlete is a job. Believe it or not, it is a job. Whether you choose it young or you choose it over the age of 18, it's a job, and they're going to have to do 8 hours of work and have rest for 2 days. That's just the standard. So why does the Russian system produce results? It produces results because young skaters, especially the growing participation, it creates more competition, more selection around the calendar. There's much of a culture build-up, and there's an institutional scale. For example, most 70 finances, a lot of it, the schools are funded really well to be able to provide facilities for the athletes to do well, to use that equipment, to use the training time, and really to work. And there's loads of different motivational financial factors that are given in, like stipends, salaries, prize pools, and show that all keeps the athlete motivated to keep going, to push and improve. And most importantly, to do what they really love and to discover more of their talents, because Russia has a very much significant talent pool, same as the West, but Russia seems to really prioritize their talented people and really uprising them, even if they don't have the financial help or support, they can always provide it. So why is it so controversial? There is a factor of replaceability, and that is true. A lot of athletes compete, there's high competitions, and quite frankly, you can be replaced very easily if you were injured, if you're not coming up to it, you're not listening to the coaches. There's no cutting back.
Sorry guys, my camera did cut off. The mic just wasn't working. So what I was saying is that they have a line of different athletes just waiting to be replaced. And so it doesn't give them a way to sit back, rest. They have to keep going because their spot can be taken away. There's so much pressure and strict coaching cultures that is very much discussed in the media. Examples can be that they have tough methods and building up more narratives, again, like saying starving children, abusing them, which is all criticized like that. Russia keeps defending itself, saying it's a big sport. There's a lot of discipline that's needed. Sport is all about discipline and being strict on yourself, having all of this, because ultimately you want to protect your body. Your body is the machine that tries to work within figure skating, and it's all done like that. So whether you like it or you dislike the Russian system, it works. It produces stars. It produces talent. So let's try and compare this to the West and how the West system is built. So to start off, it's very much not state funded, it's a very private sport. It's a private sport where it's self-funded, athletes are self-employed, and they seek funding from family usually. So for participation base, let's compare that. We mentioned the figures of the participation in Russia. So in the US, figure skating reports to 180,000 to 200,000 registered members annually, and majority are learn to skate, juvenile/intermediate, and only a tiny fraction reach senior elite level. That means they do have quite a bit of people skating during their childhood, but then they slowly decrease, knowing that it's very much financially tied. There's a lot of money, and quite frankly, nobody can really pull up to the finances if it's really hard. And so in the UK, pretty much tens of thousands is recreational skating, and a very small elite pipeline is due to limited rinks, geography, and ice access constraints. The British have it worse probably than ever because figure skating is very not popular. There's very limited figure skating rinks at all. The facilities don't have it. Often they have to share with hockey players, and there's a lot of constraints with it, so it's very much not supported. And so all of these countries, Canada specifically as well, have a large participation base as well, but it's all recreational and very few actually reach to the elite level. And that's the main difference between how Russia has a very large pipeline, because from a very young age, it's not just about recreational, it's also about building to the elite stages and have so much more competition compared to maybe the West that produces very little. So it's described as the West skaters have a wide entry funnel but a narrow elite exit. In terms of ice rinks availability, that's the biggest issue probably, I think, out of all of them. Because, as I said, the government funds so much in Russia for figure skating, specifically rinks and schools, to provide all the resources for them. In the West, it's very little. I mean, the US have the biggest. It's 1,500 to around 1,700 indoor ice rinks. The UK have 60 permanent ice rinks, and Canada have 3,000 rinks, which is also included in the seasonal. So what does this mean? Training schedules are very fragmented. Skaters travel long distances, ice time is shared with hockey, with public skating, recreational programs. So in the West, the system isn't limited by talent, it's limited by ice. So there might be a lot of talented skaters, but they don't have the facilities to be able to really support the skaters to provide with these long training hours. They might skate for 2-3 hours a day and call it that, because they simply do not have the space nor anything. And so it's very hard to produce very elite talent and to be able to expand on that. If a Russian skater is training 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, and a Western skater, for example, only trains 3, maybe 4 hours, 5 days a week, there's going to be definitely some sort of comparison where that's why the Russians are doing well and the West isn't doing so well, producing all that talent and also skating very well. So the training structure is very decentralized by design. Western skaters usually train in private rinks, independent coaching teams, and small training groups. So like I mentioned, that it's very much private and very small and a very niche, whereas in Russia, it's not a niche sport at all. It's all state funded, it all has sponsors, it's on the TV channels, it's mainstream, and it has so much more popularity because of that. Whereas because the West are keeping it so decentralized, very limited, very niche, it's very hard for newcomers to really enjoy the skating process and to really understand what's going on. And so that's why they don't get a lot of funding, because it's very not talked about. So in terms of the training, you know how in Russia it all has a strict schedule, that this time is that, and very much rigid and very consistent. In the West, there's no single national daily training center, there's no enforced national methodology, there's no uniform daily schedule. Everything is just solely based on the athlete and what is tailored to them. There's no method specific to reaching all of this. There's no machine of competitions, if you understand, that Russia is building. It's very much individual, and that's why you get an amazing athlete produced and maybe not so an amazing one. It's very limited and very inconsistent. So typical elite Western training loads. So usually skaters work 20 to 30 hours a week in total, which is split across on-ice sessions, off-ice, ballet and conditioning. Training time often is early mornings, late evenings, fitted around school or work. So as I mentioned a lot in my other videos about how much skaters are paid, in the West it's very different because some people have part-time jobs to try and fund for their ice skating career. Western skaters prioritize flexibility over uniformity, and that's the key difference, is that they're very flexible, they're trying to fit around, adapt, whereas in Russia, figure skating comes first, training, practices all come first, and it's very much strict, rigid, consistent, and that's how discipline is built on. So the competition pathway, there's fewer start and higher stakes. Western skaters compete in fewer events per season compared to the Russians. As I mentioned, the Russians have really good domestic events scheduled throughout the event, and really the skaters can enjoy even without the international assignments. They have something to be looking forward to. Whereas it's very limited in the West. There's no, compared to Grand Prix and that's it, there's no other events trying to be scheduled in. All the athletes are only working towards is international competitions. Grand Prix are very limited, and the competition schedules are very narrow and shallow. So the typical pathway is regional competitions, selections, qualifiers, and then international assignments. So very 1, 2, 3. There's no in between, there's no other kind of fun, elaborated events, and it's very just basic. That's the only word that I can really say. And so it does kind of build more pressure on the competitions that they do have, because it's very limited, that skaters need to kind of perform well in order to make a name for themselves. Whereas in Russia, it's very different. Maybe you do fling one competition, but you have other competitions to try and prove yourself in. Of course, besides the international competitions, that's a different topic. But right now they are currently banned, so there's not much discussion on international assignments. Age and career length statistics. Western skaters tend to peak later than Russian skaters. They stay competitive into their early mid-20s, sometimes in their late 20s. And here are the reasons. It's not because of structural and not financial. There's just less extreme early specialization, because they probably don't start very young at the age of 3 like the Russians do, and kind of slowly implement the trainings, and only do they find, oh, they really want to do it, and implement more hours. So it's not very consistent. There's more autonomy in pacing and less pressure to rotate athletes quicker. So because they don't have a lot of competitions, athletes don't feel that pressure to continue working very hard, because they know they won't be replaced. They can stay longer in the sport and still dominate the competition. Western system trade earlier dominance for longevity. The coaching politics do still exist within the sport, and it will still probably do in any competition, because hate it or deny it or say it, there are a lot of politics kind of involved in that. And I know the IC are trying to implement their coaching and to implement judging to be as fair as possible, but there will always be some sort of biasness to it. And so there's no single training hub that dominates, and multiple coaching style coexist. So there's very much different styles that you will see within the West. and they are judged differently. A lot of the coaching in the West value individuality, artistry, personal storytelling, and athlete's voice. So as I mentioned, that it's not just about the system, it's about the athlete. The athlete gets to decide how many hours they train. If they are up to it, if they don't want to do it, they don't. The coaches don't really force upon it. They see they do it. If they want more of an artistic approach, they do that. They're very much, the athlete gets to decide and the coach just follows and tries to help, whereas coaches do dominate more in Russia than the athlete. The athlete does what the coach says. So the Western skating really do optimize for expression and artistry, not replication. So the styles very much differ, coaching styles differ, everything differs. There's no consistency, there's no pattern, there's no machine, no kind of system to follow. It's very much up to you, up to how it works, and that's it. There are also no really motivational financial factors. For example, they don't pay athletes any monthly salary for what they do. It's very much self-funded. Unless you're the top, then you get some sort of funding and you can live off. But a lot of skaters don't get that and have to prioritize their work over the hobby. Figure skating doesn't become their niche, their job. It just becomes a hobby that they're trying to fund and trying to make a job out of. But it's very hard, and a lot of educational demands with that. There's time pressure, there's lack of local elite training environments, there's burnout from balancing multiple commitments, because it's true, there's not just one commitment that you're focusing on so much more. The Western skating doesn't burn athletes fast, it slowly loses them. Because yes, you can argue that in Russia the system does burn athletes, but at least it burns the athletes, they still produce some sort of result, and then the skater can move on to doing other things related to figure skating that they've spent their whole entire life with. Western, they burn the skater not physically but mentally, and that's the main difference, is that athletes have to juggle so much on their plate that they have to quit because they know that it might not work out and they just cannot live two different lifestyles. What do you guys think about this? Which system do you prefer, the Russian system or the Western system? Do you think they could learn from each other and implement something more? What do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts